I'm gonna move on to the main aspect of our discussion. So allow a number of us to get into the conversation. I just want to say first, peace to Brother Wujawu, who's joining us in the panel. If you want to say something, say hello to the people. So we're going to use this next hour to get into the main fundamental aspects of the lecture.
Okay, yeah, peace, Hotep, and thanks for sending me the link. And I'm just listening in. I'm just mute my mic and sit back and listen in and learn.
All right, man. I don't know if you are keeping in with the chat or whatnot, but if you see a question or something like that, or you just want to jump in and say something, just do so.
Okay, yeah, I'm listening on my speakers while I'm walking about, so I'm just checking everything out.
All right, man, no problem.
Okay.
All right, peace. Okay. Now we're going to deal now with the word Kemet, and so I've already written an article on the meaning of the word Kemet, but a lot of us don't read, so a video seemed necessary for us, and so I titled this section "The Meaning of the Word Kemet: The Use and Misuse of Determinatives." So let's get it in. Now, the reason why the meaning of Kemet is so important is because it's been an ongoing debate since the early 60s, and probably earlier than that, actually, since the 40s and 50s, a really strong starting in the 60s, on the meaning of the word Kemet. Now, we have two fundamental hypotheses on the meaning of the word Kemet. And hypothesis one is that Kemet means black land, and then you have hypothesis two, which means where Kemet means black people, or they're arguing that Kemet means black people. Now, another issue here is that both claims assume that the root of Kemet is the word Kem, meaning black in Egyptian. So we have these two hypotheses are based on this fundamental premise. So Kemet, the argument is that it means black, that the root means black, and then that Kemet means black land, or Kemet means black people. Usually in the Eurocentric camp, they argue for black land, and then in the Afrocentric camp, they argue for black people. Now, my argument here is that both hypotheses are incorrect, and for the following reasons. One, both hypotheses ignore chronology, meaning they never asked the question, when did the word Kemet first come into being in the ancient Egyptian writing, and what was the context for its inclusion? Was Egypt always named Kemet? And if not, again, when did it get that name and why? Two, both hypotheses ignore, again, the earliest usages of the term. Three, both hypotheses ignore the classifiers or the determinatives written in the earliest forms. So not only did they not look for the earliest forms, they did not, if they did, they totally ignored the determinatives, which tell you exactly what Kemet means. And so really this argument doesn't take long to finish. It's just other contexts where we have to, explain, but it's really an easy argument to win. And lastly, I say that both hypotheses fail to support the idea that the root of Kemet is Kem, meaning black. What I mean by this is that both hypotheses assume that the root of Kemet is black, is Kem, which means black. And so when we're doing scientific analysis, you have a series of hypotheses, and then you have the null hypothesis. And the null hypothesis is the idea that whatever argument you claim is basically no fundamental change, or it's a no as far as the fundamental research question. So if we have a research question, does the word Kemet derive from the word Kem, meaning black? The null hypothesis would be that no, Kemet does not derive from the word Kim, meaning black. And so that's one hypothesis based on a series of hypotheses that should have been brought forth when doing a scientific analysis of the word Kemet. And so we're going to deal with hypothesis one real quick. And it doesn't matter what Egyptological work you read. They all, for the most part, if they're written by Europeans and others, argue that the word Kemet means black soil. So I don't have to cite a whole bunch of them. I could just cite one major one. And if you read this, you've read all the other ones. This citation is coming from James P. Allen, who wrote a book called Middle Egyptian: An Introduction to the Language and Culture of Hieroglyphs. And on page 345, he says, the word Kemet, Egypt, literally means black, referring to the soil of the Nile Valley. CSA 2. This is why Egyptian, or the Egyptian language or Egyptian hieroglyphs, uses the preposition her, meaning on, rather than m, meaning in. Her Kemet means literally on the black land. So this is one argument here, and this is just one example of hypothesis one, that the word Kemet means black land or soil. They actually got this, I think, from Herodotus, who made, or if it wasn't Herodotus, it was some other Greek, and I have it in my notes, I just don't have it in memory. A Greek philosopher or traveler who made that assumption that the word Kemet itself derives from the black silt that was left after the inundation with the farming. That's the hypothesis, and they just rolled with it. And so then there's hypothesis two, which originated from Dr. Kmt Diop in his book On the Right in French, and I'll just translate. The genetic relationship of Pharaonic Egyptian and Black African or Negro African languages. And so in this text, he puts forth the argument that that the word Kemet, again, derives from a root meaning Kim, meaning black, and that it doesn't refer to the soil or the land, but it refers to the people. And we'll get into why he was inspired for that. And so I'm assuming that the majority of this audience doesn't read the French text, but to get this hypothesis, you don't have to read the French to get it. You can get the book Great African Thinkers, Kmt Diop, edited by Ivan van Sertima, which came out in 1986. And the fourth printing was in 1992, if I remember correctly. And in that text, they include a lot of Diop's works and articles and ideas in English. So on pages 46 to 48, you could get this argument. And this is what he states. He says that the Egyptians had only one term to designate themselves, Kemet, the Negroes, literally, or the blacks, so to speak. And so he's arguing that they're calling themselves black people. He continues on that last page, and he says, in the Egyptian language, a word of assembly is formed from an adjective or a noun by putting it in the feminine singular. Kemet, from the adjective kim, black, from the adjective kim equals black. It therefore means strictly Negroes, or at the very least, black men. The term is a collective noun which does describe the whole people of Pharaonic Egypt as a black people. So again, he's further making this argument that that Kemet means black people and not the black soil. And so he goes into more in elaborate detail on for why that is. Now we're going to deal with hypothesis one and why it's wrong. Well, actually, this actually takes care of some of hypothesis 2 as well. And so we'll just keep it. But as I mentioned earlier, both hypotheses make the argument that the word Kemet, derives from a root Kem, meaning black. Now, you have to understand that ancient Egyptian did not write out its vowels. So the words that we see are the consonants to the words, which means that they are the skeletons and you don't know the vowels. Now, there are various different Kemet words and Kim words, and they have nothing to do with black. And so the question is, why would you assume, based on these other renderings, that the word Kemet derives from Kim, meaning black, versus any other Kim that has a different meaning or designation? And so this is an example coming from the Collagen language, which is in East Africa and Tanzania, Kenya, southern parts of Uganda, and Ethiopia. They have different words that have, if you take out the vowels, which you see in the center column here, it looks like the words Kim and Kemet. And so if we didn't have the information on the left with the vowels, it would be, we could see why it would be erroneous if they have a word Kim, like the word Kimoi, meaning darkness, deriving from the same root as ancient Egyptian Kim, meaning black, but to assume that every other word here means black, or comes that the KM in these words mean black. So as we can see, for example, Kamama, the home or place of maternal uncles. It wouldn't be the home or the place of black maternal uncles. It wouldn't make any sense. Or Kamit, his, her, its mother, or his, her, its black mother. Kimiut, a famine. Is there a such thing as a black famine? Or Kimaita, Kemet, the late, a deceased person. The word Kim, to die. Kemit, become strong. Can you be black strong? You know, I know there's some RBG people probably listening like, hell yeah, you can have and be black strong. But let's be scientific here. Is there such, and you know, and then, you know, we're to really get them this word Kemit, fine power or fine black power. And so that would be a concept in the modern times, given the experience here in North America. But in ancient Egyptian concept, they had, in ancient Egyptian times, they had no such thing as black power. And then Kimayit, cereal or porridge. Is the porridge black? I doubt they were eating black cereal and porridge. And that would be related to the word kimyo, meaning loaf or loaf of bread. And so there is no black bread like that without some modern, you know, modifications. And then you have dried and meat, meaning country, and yemit, meaning homeland, country, state, terrain, region, which is one of the arguments for Kemet that I bring forth, that's actually the cognate for the ancient Egyptian word Kemet, meaning land. So we can see here that, you know, assuming that all of these words here have a root Kim, meaning darkness, would just be erroneous. And it would be the same even in ancient Egypt, as I noted beforehand. So we could see these words here, the word Kim, you know, meaning to perform, in the phrase Kim Kait, perform work. And with the word Kerit or Kait, meaning work. Km.t, inhabitants of Athribis. That's a city inside Kemet. And so if the word Kemet means black, then why would you have Km.t? Are these people blacker than the rest of the Egyptians who live in Kemet, who also lives in Africa surrounded by black people? Word Kim, complain. Is there such thing as a black complain? Or a Kim, black make fool? You know, or a Kim, a black book of wisdom? You know, it's it's just ridiculous when you really think about it. And so, you know, you can pause this again and look at it yourself and see why that argument falls to the wayside. And so you can't assume that just because you have the word Kim and written with the glyphs that we know for the word Kemet, that somehow that it automatically means that the word Kemet means black. That's not the case. So we have to have some other criteria for determining, you know, what it means. So you notice that basically these are all homographs and consonant wise homonyms. But when you look at these tail ends of these words, you see these hieroglyphs here. These are what we call determinatives, and they let you know the context for what the word means. So for instance, this word Kemet, a book of wisdom, this determinative here is used in ancient Egyptian literature to mean book, because it's something that they tied papyrus scrolls together with this rope of string. So it means books. And so, for instance, this one here, a serapeum, a temple in Menepher or Memphis. You know, so we have the determinative of a place, and then we have a bull. Now, a bull could be black, but that's not guaranteed. But it has nothing to do with black bull. It's a temple, it's a place. And so you've never seen in any of your, if anybody's ever visited Egypt, like I have, or been to a museum, you've never seen a black temple. It doesn't exist in ancient Egypt. And so that concept is thrown out of the window. And we can go on and on, you know, like we have here, this determinative of a man with his hand to his mouth, pointing to his mouth or face, showing you that it is a verb, first of all, and that is a verb dealing with his mouth, something that he says. So you can't black complain. You know, black is not a verb, first of all. Black is an adjective. It describes a noun. And so this wouldn't make sense in no matter how you looked at it, because it's ungrammatical, it's conceptually erroneous, and it just, again, doesn't make any sense. So we're going to go into hypothesis 2. Now, where Km.t Diop argued that the word Kemet derives from Kim, meaning black, and that it means black people, it is because of this hieroglyph, this version of the word Kemet that you see here in the top left-hand corner. Now, I can surmise, based on the evidence, that Km.t Diop did not read the primary literature. He got this from the dictionary. He looked at the dictionary and saw that this ancient Egyptian word for Kemet had a man, a seated man, and a woman as the determinatives. And the plural here, you know, meaning a collective. So he automatically assumed that the word black here, Kim, or so-called the word Kim, he assumed, one, that it meant black, and that two, it was describing the determinatives here, meaning the people. So when Km.t Diop says, you know, that Kemet means black people, he's basing it off of this glyph. And you'll see it in the article written in Ivan Van Sertima's dedication to Km.t Diop that I mentioned earlier. And so, however, what Km.t Diop didn't know is that there's only one instance of this hieroglyph in the ancient Egyptian literature, and it's found in the hymns to Sesostris III in Dynasty 12. And here is the transliteration of the hieroglyphs. And here is the, I put where the word Kemet is, where you see the hieroglyphs, where the hieroglyph would be, in if we were just looking at the raw stela or whatnot, you know, here. So here's, you know, the details here, but you see Kemet here written twice with that same the same determinatives. And so it says it was after he had ruled Egypt or Kemet, and after he had put the desert, which is this word here, Desheret, in his company, and he's talking about Sesostris, that he came to us. It was after he had protected the two lands, which is this word Idibli here, and after he had pacified the two, sorry, that's the word here, Tawi, and Idibli here is the word for two banks. Or this is the word for bank, and this W and Y is a suffix denoting double. And so the same thing with this ta word meaning land here, and the suffix meaning double. So the two lands and the two banks, or the two sides of the river, the Nile River, that he came to us. It was after he had caused Kemet or Egypt to live, and after he had removed its needs, that he came to us. And so this is what this transliterates to, and this is what it translates to. And this is taken straight from our article on Kemet after I cited that text. And so what I stated was the way that this passage is worded lets us know that it is talking about the state as a political entity and not the Nisbi adjective form Kemet, those of Kemet. This is supported by the fact that Kemet is used in the same manner as all of the other political locations in the text. The names Desheret, Tawi, and Idibli in the original text does not employ personal determinatives. Furthermore, after the second sentence containing the word Kemet, it refers back to the word Kemet by means of a third person singular feminine suffix pronoun s, it. If it spoke about the people, we would expect sin, they, them, not it. So when we go back, saying to this text here, we see that it's speaking of different political entities. So the desert, Kemet, and the other designations for, saying Egypt being the two banks and the two lands, basically. So Upper and Lower Egypt, or Upper and Lower Kemet. And so even though it has as its determinative people, it does not say anything like they or their Kemet or they or something to that nature. It refers to the political state. It removed its needs, which you see right here. It meaning the state as a political entity and not the people. So you couldn't argue, as Km.t did, that this black means people here, because when we go to the primary text, it has no such designation, and it doesn't make sense in the sentence or in the paragraphs. So this is why it's important to always go to the primary text when we have problems of definition, so that we can get better clarity and look at the glyphs directly. And so what Km.t didn't realize is that, one, Kemet wasn't always named Kemet. The word Kemet and even the word Ta-Meri, which is another name for Kemet, didn't come along until the late 11th dynasty, the 12th dynasty. And in the earliest attestations of the word Kemet, you see this in this text here. It comes from a Wadi Hamamat graffito of the early 12th dynasty of Antef. Here, just like in the example that I gave before, we have the two versions of the word Kemet in the sentence. And we see here that this Kemet, like the other one, had a determinative of two people, but this version has a determinative of irrigated land. And so that's why I said it's real easy to dismiss both of these arguments, because the Eurocentrics are right in the sense that it means land, but they're wrong when they argue that it means black land. And so here is proof here that it actually means, you know, land, or it refers to land, because we see it here in the text. And the earliest attestations, see, the common attestation after a period is what you see here in this third row. This word Kemet here with the 049 city determinative. But the earliest attestations of Kemet are these two forms right here on the left-hand side. And so notice that the Kem glyph is backwards in this version. But notice these two determinatives here. The N23 irrigated canal and the N36. This is also a canal, you know, in used for land and irrigation and stuff to that nature. And so this deads and kills the argument that it refers to black people, because you couldn't argue that it's referring to black water or a black river. It doesn't make any sense. And so it's important, you know, to understand this determinative here, the N23, because the N23 and the 049 interchange. And I give an example here at the bottom. This is a hieroglyphic word, sapat, meaning district, nome, or necropolis. Notice that this version has the N23 hieroglyph determinative, meaning irrigated land. And then you see another version of the same word, but it has the 049 city glyph, district, nome. Same word, same meanings, but different determinatives. So this shows you that they interchange. So even if I see Kemet written like this, I should be thinking Kemet like this, because they're interchangeable. They mean the same thing. They reference the same idea, which is talking about an irrigated land, land with water running through it, a canal, a river, or whatnot. That's what allows people to live in cities, water. And this is another important aspect that I bring out in the literature. This comes from a book by Fisher, Henry G. Fisher, called Ancient Egyptian Calligraphy, A Beginner's Guide to Writing Hieroglyphs. And so he's going through the determinatives. So he's showing the N23 glyph that we showed earlier, meaning irrigation canal. And this is how you would draw it. But he makes a note here. He says, in my book, Dendera, page 90, I note that the Old Kingdom determinatives, N20 through N22 and A12, these right here, these determinatives became the N36 in Dynasty 8 and the N23 in the late Dynasty 11. So remember that these were, the word Kemet didn't come into usage for the state until the 12th, about the 12th dynasty. So during the 8th and 11th dynasties, that's when these two glyphs, hieroglyphs here, transformed into these hieroglyphs. The N36 and the N23, the irrigated land, which tells you that these have to deal with irrigated land. And so I'm going to continue to the next slide. This, and I should have put the specific citation. This is coming out of Gardner's book on ancient Egyptian. And so those two hieroglyphs, the N20, N21, and N22, are a tongue of land or whatnot, or a stretch of land that is basically surrounded by water, or extends out into the water, or is on the edge of water. And so the pronunciation is Wajeb, or Wageb, which later became Wadeb and Edeb, because the J sound became D. And so it's a word meaning sandbank or shore. And especially here is a word meaning bank, like a river bank, region. And in a dual form, we remember that we suffix means two, the two banks, therefore Egypt. So you can see that beforehand, this word Idibu or Igebu was a word for ancient Egypt, meaning the two banks. And it had, just like what we saw in that version of Kemet, those determinatives. So we can see these determinatives used in the word for earth, fields, town, or whatnot. So they're determinatives used for places. And so this is the meaning of the word. He did riverbank, riparian land, shore, land which waters of the Nile can reach. And so it's telling you that the word Kemet is a particular type of land, not just land, but a land with a river running through it, or water, a great amount of water. That's what those versions are telling you. And so it is dealing with fertile land. And fertile land is land with water on it. And so in the word-to-bush dictionaries, you can see the word Kemet in this entry with the 049 glyph here. He gives you the alternative determinatives. You see this DET right here? It means determinative. N23, N36, and 049. So the dictionaries is telling you that it's dealing with land with water, with irrigation, irrigatable land, land with a river or canal in it. It's very simple. And so, here are other places in the word-to-bush dictionary that you can see it. You can pause this, when you want to read it on your own. But you see here two variations here. Kemet here in this phrase with the N36 determinative, and then Kemet here written with the N23, both dealing with irrigated land or river. And so when we look into other Black African languages, we can see, the more specific terms for or cognates for these terms. So like in the Bassa language, it's Kam, meaning farm. The Doi language, Kam, farm. It's Itako, Ikam, farm. Ngodzin, Kam, farm. Kumadin in the Runda language, farm. Is again, a farm is a place that has fertile land, and of course you can't have fertile land without water. And so it is come to mean, country land in general in other places. So, in the Balu language, Kom, country, region. In Okam, Ikoma, city. Kom, in Zim, rural area. These are all Intu languages in many places. Batateka, Komwa, country, region. Kumi, country, in Bakwira. In the Zulu language, it's Kumbi, nation. In the Penda language, Guma, country, region. Diwoi, Gumo, village, city. Kaga, Gumi. In Lingala, Goomba, city. And in the Gala language, this is not a Chibantu language, but they have Gomji, land which grows warm and is healthily cultivated. All these are cognates or variants of the word Kemet, without the Egyptian T suffix. So, we have to be careful. And this is why we have to do a serious analysis when there is controversy and debates and not just go with our first mind. We have to be able to systematically look at these things. So based off of the survival in other African languages and based on the primary glyphs themselves, there's no way that one can argue that Kemet means black, one, and that Kemet means black people or black land. Both hypotheses have been falsified. And so now we're going to move on.